think it's recording. Okay. So
Okay.
the first artwork we looked at was Lawrence Paul Eucalypton's piece, and um, we were looking at how we were drawn to how colorful it was.
Yes. And one of the, I guess the first thing I noticed about the work that we also discussed was the contrast going on between a lot of it being very colorful and then some of it being kind of quite shaded, heavily shaded and a bit darker. And we really took notice to the sign post toward kind of the left and, this figure holding up what we thought to maybe represent a treaty, and just, some of the meaning that we saw from that.
And
Um, yeah.
yeah, something that interesting that you were talking about too is just the leading lines and the path that um, we kind of are taken on by being on like the ground, but there's other
Right.
things to notice, like the mountains that have so much richness in color and detail. And you also notice the water, which, although it's just like blue, it also represents depth. So there's more to um, just indigeneity and forgotten lands that
Right.
needed to be uh, noticed and acknowledged prior to the signing of the treaty. Is that what the history? I
Yeah.
don't quite
Yeah.
remember.
And then you spoke to the tension that's created when you see that signpost, which is like kind of an homage to perhaps to colonization and the tension between that and indigenous culture, and just the emotion that evokes. But we kind of thought that there was a really really amazing complex interplay going on with simultaneously recognizing colonization and genocide, but also looking forward to the future, much like you're looking forward to these colorful mountains in the backdrop, and how this is all part of our process and our responsibility to come to terms with this, to better understand it. So all in all, we was probably one of our favorites. I'd say it was one of my favorites.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the next one was Brian Youngin's series.
Oh yes, that one.
It's like
Which
made of sneakers, and we
yes.
we talked about colonialism, but also capitalism.
Mhm.
And what else did we talk about?
How when you first look at it, you don't realize that they're shoes,
Yeah.
and how the meaning changes, or my personal interpretation changes once you acknowledge that. um and I thought of like just the times I've gone in museums, like in Toronto. I think I've seen like stuff like that, and I thought maybe to me it captured a theme of how maybe European culture, dominant culture, has tried to take over the discourse or create the discourse around what it means to be indigenous. And you know what I mean? And it's like almost
Yeah.
like maybe indigenous people feel like they kind of need to reclaim it almost, and maybe it was this, I thought it was like this kind of, it was reclaiming it because by using the shoes and like this kind of big iconic cultural thing, if
Yeah,
that
and there's
makes
this
sense.
ongoing evolution that is a result of just time passing. So although there's still um, it's still indigenous art, it's not like Bill Reed's like YVR art. There's more complexity to it because uh, we are situated in the present, and these contemporary influences are a part of indigenous art today. And to remove that would make it apolitical and would feed into a white narrative of, or not necessarily white narrative, is like a bad thing to say.
Right. No, that's just,
Yeah.
yeah, but I see what you mean. Yeah. totally. So yeah, that pretty much sums up kind of our reactions to it. And I also just pointed out how I question my own biases and just things that I learned in childhood kind of about what it means to be Indigenous, and like how this childhood reputation based on what I'd seen in the media of, oh, that's scary, like those masks are scary, but it's like, who informed me, right, of what has influenced me to kind of have that reaction of, oh, you see the masks and it's like that kind of, that racial stereotyping, that racism of like, oh, okay, that's savagery, and you know what I mean. And it just caused me to really just reflect on what has influenced me, like just being young, and how that is evolving too. And I just think that's an important thing that to consider too. Yeah.
For sure. And commenting on that, we also talked about how just the use of these modern materials kind of bridges that, and we can connect to it through that because we all wear shoes, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. Wow.
Yeah. And
Great.
then the next one was Jude Norris, and that was
Yeah.
like there was a lot of humor in that piece because of the moose on the roof
And
of the house.
irony, and yeah.
Yeah, and there was like a lot of uh yeah, it was very modern because it's digitally manipulated.
Yeah, photoshopped.
Hmm.
um this was my second favorite for sure. And and the interesting thing about this is because I think you ended up Googling this
Hmm.
artist, and kind of, and then of course we then reinterpreted it through that those lenses. But my initial gut reaction to it was, uh, I thought it was so powerful, and so it was really speaking to the displacement of um, indigenous peoples, and just showing this sense of, it's like first we tried to just get, just have, first there was this sort of genocide, and then there was this kind of sense, oh, okay, um, we can't get rid of them, so we're going to have to try and assimilate them. And I thought, and I interpreted it like that, like it was just saying, like, just showing that kind of that horror, and that just making trying to make that culture, the indigenous culture, like irrelevant, and that being shown in like this kind of, um, in
Did
that
you find
way.
it like jarring? Like the because
And
it's
so, yeah, right, that's what I said. I just thought it was
high
just very
contrast.
jarring, and just really was powerful. I thought it was just really powerful. But then when we read about this artist, it actually turned out that this artist was, it kind of seemed like actually that the artist was playing around with it, and was just talking about sort of like how odd it is, how odd it can be in contemporary society, like for them to identify with their indigenous um, culture, but then also be in this contemporary society that is influenced by like European culture. So it kind of, it's really weird how that happened. And then I was talking to you about how I took quite a few Canadian history courses in my undergrad, and so my view has very much been shaped by that, where it's like when I see this kind of stuff, my reaction is like anger and outrage, because those courses that I took were very much about like, these are all the horrible things that we have done. And there wasn't that sense of, it didn't have as much of that reconciliation, was just noticing and just being outraged. And that was where it seems to me that that's where we just drew the line, and we didn't go beyond that. And so I'm finding myself looking at this and thinking about where I'm coming from, and trying to go beyond just that outrage, and try to actually, try to, I don't know, just try to learn from it in a new way, and just evolve, I guess, in my understanding. So
For sure. And I think
yeah.
it kind of also recognizes the need for integrating um, both the history and the current reality. Um, and that's like a pretty big, um, it's just very like the fact that it's so jarring is also it's like it kind of to me it prompts me to think about how it's something we need to recognize.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that what you just said there is the intersection between both of our reactions and interpretations. That it's very, that was the common point. Um, but it was interesting how there was that difference in emotional reaction, and then we looked at, tried to see it from looking at a little bit more about the artist, and then how that reinterpreted my understanding and stuff like that. And yeah,
Mm.
so yeah, the last one was,
The smoke signal. No, that's sorry. That's that's part of the
oh
verses. Sorry, this is the it was the Trojan horse one,
yeah,
the last one. Um, and it's kind of just like it's a it flips the narrative
yeah,
for what
that
could
was
happen.
that's what we both noticed as well, was like we kind of like be it being subversive,
Hmm.
and kind of show like calling attention to um what if it was the other way around kind of thing. um I don't know, it just felt like there was a sense of I was a little bit, I feel like there was just a lot going on in it, and I felt actually quite, to be honest, my reaction was like I felt very overwhelmed, and
Yeah.
in because I feel like I was really trying to make meaning out of it and interpret it, when it's probably supposed to be more open-ended than I think it is, or just, yeah. So I just think it's one of those things where it's like we kind of both thought, okay, there's kind of some subversion going on. They're trying to flip the narrative around in some way. The figures that are shown in it, they appear to be white, so it appears to portray white people as they're naked, and they're kind of
Instead of
doing
as the oppressors, they're like
right. But it's
they're
interesting to
pushing
think
back.
that we see it that way too.
I
To
think
automatically, because it's interesting for me to think like, oh, they're naked right now, so that means that they're in that position. And it's just like, what does that, how does that speak to like my own biases and stuff like that? So just interesting.
I think that just the this particular artwork uh at the end of this thing was an interesting choice because I think that it opens because it's like a reversal of the narrative. It kind of opens up the conversation, but because we were already so invested in digging deeper, it was we were already like kind of there. And but I think that this particular like this kind of art can open people's minds and make them think outside of the box because they have to think in the opposite way. Um,
Yeah,
but that's why there
I
was like a
totally
bit of
agree.
like yeah, like I kind of just the way I thought about it was influenced by the way we were thinking about the other pieces, and it made it harder to make
Mm,
sense of.
yeah, that really speaks to one of the main, the really, that's a really good place to kind of conclude this, really, because that speaks to kind of the one of the main components that we're exploring right now, which is how our how who we are, and all the experiences that we've have and learned, how that influences the our interpretation of the art we're looking at, and our relationship with indigenous art and indigenous culture, and our understanding of that. So yeah,
Mhm,
yeah, really amazing, incredible artwork.
for sure.
um hadn't you definitely had heard of a couple of these
Yeah.
artists, but I am happy to be discovering them. So yeah,
Yeah. Should
I
I
guess
end
that
it?
concludes our video. So
Yes.
thank you for watching. Thank you for listening
Yeah,
to
thanks
our
for listening
discussion.
if you want.